Welcome. Our very first webinar of the season. We did a seed starting one maybe 6 weeks ago. But that was like a standalone. That was just for seeds. This is our start of the spring season. It's, you know, our Christmas time in a garden center. For any gardener, I think this is by far and away the most exciting time of year, especially when we go through long, dark winters. And although this winter wasn't terrible, it seemed like it really dragged on. And yet here we are. We're in spring. It's April. I don't know if anybody had a chance to get out yesterday. I really hope you did. What an amazing day. But just remember, those days at this time of year are the anomaly. So, you know, I've got a couple of colorful little planters here, but that's just to bring some color here. It is still too early to put things outside. It's still too early to plant. But what we are going to talk about, instead of me telling you what you can't do, we're going to talk about what you can do. Because if you're like me, you're itching to get out into the garden, get your hands dirty, play in the soil. Every time you go out, you're looking in your beds. Oh, is something happening? Where are the buds on the trees? All of that excitement, listening to the birds. One thing I can always appreciate about birds is that the moment they wake up, they just lose their minds. I feel the same, bird. I feel the same. So we're going to talk first and foremost, and I've got my notes here. They're the slides. I just print out the slides. Anybody who's followed us in past webinars or on GA Kids TV probably know I have a tendency to just digress and just go off. If I don't have notes, it could end up very bad. So I try and keep myself on track. And one thing I will say, this is kind of what we do for all of our webinars and seminars. At the end, there will be a time for Q&A. Whatever you guys have got, we will answer. If you can hold your questions until then, it's just going to make everything go smoother and stay on time. However, with that being said, if there is a problem with comprehension, you don't understand what I said and you're getting lost, please interrupt. Fire something into the chat. Brandy will interrupt me. She loves interrupting me. Yeah. Yeah. She wears that badge very proudly. Brandy is 100% on your side, not my side. Yeah. So if you're having a problem with comprehension or something just really doesn't make sense and you feel like you're getting lost, absolutely ask. We'll clarify and we'll move on. So with that being said, let's just jump straight in. And we'll talk. I mean, today's a great spring day as well. It's great to get these seasons. It always seemed like for a number of years, Calgary had winter and then we went straight into summer. You know, it was winter all through April, snow and cold in May, and then suddenly summer. And I really, especially coming from England, I really like spring. I don't mind cool, rainy days. I don't mind bright, sunny days. The garden is eating it all up. It's all beneficial. We need all of it together to get really healthy gardens. So our garden is waking up, much like I am on a Saturday morning. And let's talk about how does a garden wake up? Because if we can understand, then we know the jobs we're doing, you know, we understand why we're doing them more so. So we all know in the autumn, our gardens go to bed. They go to sleep. Leaves fall down, the trees go dormant, perennials die back, annuals are finished for the season. And then we get winter and it's cold. And it's snowy and it's icy and everything is frozen solid, especially after that polar blast we got over Christmas and into January. So what's happening now is, first and foremost, the most important thing, the one thing that's triggering all of this life that we're seeing is the return of the longer days. It's the lack of light that puts the trees to sleep. Now it's the extended light that's triggering everything to wake up. And it's what the light brings with it, which is also extended warmth. So we're getting more sunlight. The planet is rotated, so now we're closer to the sun. And that's creating the warmth. So everything is melting. sap is starting to run in the tree again, and the tree is now starting to feel it. And if you think about it, when that ground freezes solid hard, I don't know if anybody's ever done any winter digging for whatever reason, burst pipes or emergency planting or emergency moving a plant because of a burst pipe, things like that. That ground can be pretty unforgiving. I've done it a couple of times, very, very few, and I've had to use a pickaxe. That's how bad it can be. But as that starts melting, that ice cube that's around the roots is now turning to moisture, and those roots are waking up. They're starting to drink, and it's pushing those buds up out of the surface. So that receding snow and ice is actually pushing moisture into our plants now. And that's another thing. So now we've got light, we've got warmth, we've got moisture. Key elements to any plant survival are those three factors. And with that, as things start thawing and things start moving, we get activity, and the worms start going, and the bugs start going, and there's all kinds of things happening. The birds flying around. I don't know if you guys have seen them yet. I've seen one. I saw a bug flying around outside yesterday, and I was like, settle down, bug. I couldn't see what it was. It might have been a ladybug. I wasn't 100%, but I saw a bug, and I was like, oh yeah, always happy to see my first bug. So there's activity, a lot happening below the soil. As the plants are waking up, so are the worms and the nematodes and all those microscopic things are happening. And the nutrients are being released. They're no longer frozen solid. Just like we put food in the freezer, you can't eat it. We need to warm it up. That's what's happening in the soil. So all of those nutrients in the soil are waking up, and the roots are going, oh, I'll have a drink of water. Oh, I'll grab some of that. This is awesome. And it's encouraging that top to grow. As that grows, the extra light is creating photosynthesis, hitting it, pushing it down, going, here's some sugar roots. Give me some more. Here's some sugar for you, baby. And the roots are, Randy's dancing too. Yeah, we dance a lot as well. I can't actually dance, but that has never stopped me before. So the roots are pulling all of that up, and the cycle has begun. Our gardens are back to life. So what you can expect to see now that snow and ice is receding, the light is coming out, things are moving, are the perennial shoots. So we start to see, some of the earlier ones, lamb's ear, daylilies, hostas are some of the earlier ones. And you'll just see those little spikes coming up above the ground. Always exciting to look for them. They always look better in my mind than they do on my phone, because I always take pictures of them, and then I look and I'm like, that's crap. Like it's just a tiny purple spike in soil. But I am so excited, I can't help myself to do it. And we'll see the trees and those dry brown branches. Now suddenly the ends and the buds are swelling because that leaf is ready to pop, because the same thing, the tree roots are pulling up all of those nutrients. The increased bird activity, they're flying around, they're looking to make nests, they're looking for the debris on the ground, like, oh, I'll have this branch, oh, I'll take some of these leaves. And they're going full ball. Bugs, I saw one yesterday. The predator bugs are going to be waking up just as the problem bugs, and they're going to be looking for something to eat. And you want to encourage that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But you want to encourage that, because any of the aphids or spider mites that may have survived over the winter, these guys are looking for them. They wake up hungry, ready to rock and roll. They're like little tiny miniature grizzly bears. Not nearly as dangerous though, unless you're an aphid. Then it's a huge problem. But they're out looking for that as well, and they're going to start scrunching. So if you see them, you want to encourage that. We've got the bulbs breaking out. We've got the lawns starting to go green. My lawn in the last week, it looked like you could set it on fire. It looked dry and it looked dead. And now it's not green. It's not even close to green. But now it doesn't look dead. Now it looks like a healthy yellow, where before it was brown. So it's greening up. The chlorophyll's starting to move. Those roots are starting to get what they need. The sunlight hitting it, all excellent things. Really, really pushing it up. However, I bring up all of that great stuff. I should have started with the bad stuff and then transition. I'm like, look at all this amazing stuff. Now the bad news. That's why I'm not a doctor. we're going to see debris. We're going to see garbage that blew in from the winter, from those winter storms, knocked over a garbage can and blew garbage around. We're going to see debris, branches that came down, or maybe leaves and branches you couldn't get to in the fall. Maybe you didn't get a chance. You know, these days everybody is busy. I get it. No judgment here. I'm busy. And you might not have got a chance to cut back perennials. So all of that's in there, and there's leaves. So we've got that to look at. And then that compacted, grayish looking soil where the snow's been sitting on it, the ice has pulled it in, and that's all sitting there as well. And that's all part and parcel of spring. We're going to see that. And now we go, well, what do I do about it? What can I do? And the great thing is that this is a great time of year to do that. Gardening doesn't have to be all done. Gardening can't be done. I'm going to dial that back, actually. Gardening can't be done in one shot. It doesn't matter how efficient you are, how your time management is. Gardening is an ongoing project. You're never, ever, ever, unless you're like, I'm never gardening again, then you can be done. But until that day comes, there's always something to do in the garden. There's just peaks and valleys of how busy it is. Spring is the busiest time. So if we can break the jobs up so that you don't have to be out there for 12, 13 hours breaking your back, and you can do a little bit here and a little bit there and get your garden going, so much the better. So while it is, again, too early to plant, it's not too early to do the other things. So what do you need to know? What can we do at this time of year in the garden? What can we do at this time during the webinar? We can have a coffee. So we can amend and cultivate our soil. Great thing is you can do those two jobs together. Amending simply means adding fresh nutrients, organic matter, whatnot to the soil. Cultivating simply means breaking it up. We'll get to that in a second. Watering. Do you need to water? Are things dry? I tried to force some tulip bulbs for my mom. My mom moved into a condo and she lost her garden and she's sad because she doesn't have her tulips. So I did some cold storage tulips in a pot. Now I've got them outside. Well, yesterday they were bone dry. I had to go out and water them. So we may need to water certain things. And again, we're gonna get into this in more depth later on. Fertilizing. Are we ready to fertilize? Are we not ready to fertilize? How is that going to work? Removing debris. The knee-jerk reaction is clean it all up. Is that the right thing? You might be surprised. Yeah, we want to get some of it out if it's choking out plants. But we want to leave some. And then planning and prep. It's a great time. If you've got seedlings going, to look and design a map and have fun. Bring the kids in. Make it an activity. So let's start right off the top, and we'll talk about amending and cultivating the soil, because that's a great activity you can do. So the basis of this is if you manage to get into your garden, last fall, and get it all cleaned up and all the debris and everything's done and your garden is open, or it's a veggie plot and it's wide open, you pulled out all of your old tomatoes and peppers and whatnot. Now we're gonna bring that soil back. So every year, without fail, I get asked a handful of times by people who come in and they go, "Oh, do I have to replace all my soil?" So I'm going to tell you, in the decades I've been doing horticulture and landscaping and gardening, I've only ever had to change the soil once, and that was because we were doing a landscaping project and somebody had buried. Whoever had done the house years prior to us, they buried an old oil furnace. There'd been leakage, it had contaminated the soil. So that was out of our hands. The municipality came in, they took it, they were looking for the person who'd done it because they're gonna get a massive fine. And obviously when they were done excavating and testing, we replenished that soil. That was a contamination. Most of the time, our soil is fine. It's just tired. It's depleted. We grew tomatoes and peppers and flowers and trees and raspberries, and it pulled all of the nutrients so that we got those amazing blossoms and delicious fruits and veggies. So we need to give that back. So amending, if you can see there, is just adding any material to a soil to help it with water retention, add organic material, freshen up nutrients. And cultivating is just breaking up that crusty surface so that the roots can move a little easier. There's a better gas interaction. Water can penetrate easier and also dry out easier. That's why we're looking at doing it. So that's all it means. Fancy words for adding stuff and breaking up crusty stuff. Okay, they just sound better, I think. So how do we cultivate and amend? What are we looking to do? So amending, like I said, is breaking that compacted soil. And if you're like me and you have a dog, not only has the snow hit it, so kudos to my doggo Jimmy. He's awesome. And in the summer, he stays out of the flower beds. We've trained him to not go. But in the winter, he doesn't know where they are. Everything is just white. So he runs through, and obviously we've got beds down the fence. Well, he likes to run up and down the fence. He's part border collie, so he's got tons of energy. And he adds to the compaction. So if people have been walking and they haven't known you've got a flower bed, you're going to get compaction there. But just the weight of the snow and the ice is going to make that soil compacted. So we need to break it up. You want to use a suitable tool. And you can literally, a garden hoe like this, we got cultivators. If it's really compact and really deep, you might need to go with a garden fork, okay, to really, really break it up. But you don't have to go too deep. Every year I see people and they've got their fork or their spade or their shovel, and they're digging down and you see the fork up to here and they're reefing it, and they've done a quarter of the work that they need to, and they're already exhausted. You just need to break the crust. The soil beneath it is fine, and as it rains and as you water, so something is going to fall. I just want to let everybody know that at some point during our webinar, it always seems something falls. So if we hear a crash, we're not even going to break. I might pick it up, but we're just going to steamroll right through. So all you want to do is break it up. But the reason we have all of these tools is you're going to use different tools for different areas. If you have an area that's really hard compacted, say it's in the middle and your dog's been running on it and the snow and the ice, and it's a vegetable plot, so there's no natural roots or trees above it to break anything, and it's just dense, then yeah, you may want to go with a garden fork. It's going to take a little bit more effort, but it's going to be worth it. If it's a smaller area, somewhere where maybe you put all of your annuals and just a couple of veggies, using something like this works great. You just literally jam it into the soil and then work backwards. See, dance moves. And that's going to help break the soil. And what it does is basically you push it in, and then when you bring it back, you chop, 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 and it breaks down the soil and gives it looser aggregates. But then you may get into your perennials, your hostas, your iris, your raspberries, things like that. You may find that this is going to work better, or this. And this is a telescopic one, so you're not breaking your back. The reason you want to use these, you can get in between them easier, and you can feel if it grabs any roots. You don't want to rip through the roots. Those roots don't want to be broken. You don't want to break the tips off. So depending on which area you're working, you may need to go with another tool. I wouldn't recommend doing a 20 square foot vegetable plot with one of these. It's going to be back-breaking. You're going to be done. And I wouldn't recommend doing a full perennial bed with one of these. You're not going to be able to get it in without damaging your plants. So ideally, you want to change up the tool for the area you're in, but the principle remains the same. You want to break the crust, break the aggregates into nice, small, loose, fresh soil, and then you're up and running. So you can cultivate and amend at the same time. I see it all the time. Even people I know, they're guilty of it. They go through, they turn all the soil, and then they grab their peat moss, or their compost, or their worm castings, or their biochar, or their volcanic mineral, or all of them, or their coir, whatever is your blend. And they put that all down, and then they go back to the beginning and they turn it all again. Do it at the same time. If you're ready to cultivate, so there's no debris or anything else, and you put it down, well, as you're turning and breaking, you're going to be turning your nutrients and your amendments into the soil. So you're going to be adding those amazing additives and feeding it as you do it. So do it at the same time. Now, one trick I'll give you, and again, this is from years of doing it, years of getting my hands dirty. When you're putting down your compost or your peat moss or whatever it is, if you're in a perennial bed, don't just blanket it, because I've done this before, back when I was a rookie, not paying attention, trying to go quicker rather than spending, 2 minutes. And I dumped a bunch of compost on a perennial, and the perennial already had shoots. I believe it was a hosta, might have been in a stilby, doesn't matter. But it had shoots coming up. Well, I didn't see it. And I'm going through, and I literally ripped my cultivator right through the middle of my perennial. I broke all of the shoots off of it. I did damage to the roots. Now it came back. That year, it didn't look so good. That year, it took a hit, but it did come back. I nursed it. I made sure it had what it needed. I could have avoided that by just going a little bit slower and spending time. Again, if you know that it's your vegetable plot, it's empty, it's clean, there's nothing in there, go buck wild. Okay, just get it done and turn it. Again, you don't want to go deep. Don't break your back doing it. And a lot of times, I'll give you another reason why as well, is we plant a seedling or a 4-inch pot, and the root system is only this deep. Well, like I said, I see people turning up to there, so they put their plant in. All of this is going to filter all the way through before the roots ever get to it. You want to just get your amendments worked into the top 2 or 4 inches of the soil and have it broken up. That way, if you work them really deep, I mean, you're not going to do any harm whatsoever. It's not like you're going to damage your garden. You're just not going to get the bang for your buck out of your amendments. And you're doing a lot of heavy lifting for really no payoff. So, but if you want to get a good garden workout, strongly pull. You can absolutely do it. So what you want to do as well is, and I just touched on this, and I'll go over it again because I honestly can't say it enough. Be gentle around existing plants. You may have a bed so full of shrubs and perennials that the roots have all grown into each other, and you can't get a cultivator in. You can't get a scuffle hoe or an action hoe in without damaging the roots. Then don't do it. Very, very lightly sprinkle on your peat moss or your compost in between the crowns of the plants, and just let Mother Nature take it from there. If you can't get in to break that soil, then don't. Cultivating and amending, we're meant to be adding health to the garden. We're meant to be doing good things by ripping up roots to try and get nutrients in. The damage you're doing, the nutrients aren't going to fix that. You're doing more harm than good. So you've really got to play it by ear and go gentle, but that's what you want to do. So next, weeding, raking, and cleaning. Weeding, the W word. Most gardeners hate weeding. I like it. I have no problem with weeding. I can turn my brain off. I'm outside pulling out weeds. I know I'm helping the plant. And just to reiterate here, weed simply means unwanted plant. People look at my lawn and like, oh my God, this guy's a horticulturist. It is full of dandelions and bellflower and clover and anything else that wants to grow in there. The pollinators love it. I don't have to cut it as often. I'm not out there playing professional football or soccer on it. I have a dog that runs on it. We have a fire pit, so I don't need a pristine. I'm not a golfer. I like diversity. That being said, if you do like that, again, no harm, no foul. There is not one size fits all, so I'm all for it. But you put that dandelion in my lawn, I'm like, dandelion in my lawn. You put that dandelion in my flower bed, I'm like, you're dead, weed, and it's gone. So weed as you go. Weeds are often the first plants to green up. That's how they survive. That being said, don't think because it greened up earlier, it's a weed. Know your plants. But a lot of times they do that. That's a survival technique. They're the hardiest and the quickest to adapt. That's why they can live through the conditions. So as you're amending, you can stop being like, oh, there's dandelion. Oh, there's a thistle. Oh, there's some creeping bellflower. Get it out as you go. As you're amending and you're cultivating, get rid of those weeds. And if you're raking, your lawn or your flower beds to get the debris out, gentle is the key. At this time of year, I like soft plastic rakes, okay? All I'm doing is lifting the dead leaves and the branches. I'm not dethatching my lawn. I'm not ripping through my flower beds trying to get it. I don't want to end up hurting the crown, the new shoots. I don't want to rip the roots out of the lawn. Think about how we wake up. I don't know anybody. I know some people whose eyes open and they're awake. They hit the ground running. Anybody with little kids can testify to that. But as we get older and more mature, like a garden, I don't know too many people who like being woken up in a state of urgency or panic or like having to jump out of bed and run. We like to wake up gently. We like to wake up and we like to get our amendments, AKA coffee. And we like things to kind of take a time and ease into it. Your plants are no different. They don't want you to get out there and start threshing. They've just woken up. Those new shoots and crowns, they're just waking up, looking for the sun. The grass, where it's just starting to green up and the roots are starting to grow, it's very gentle. You have to remember that was covered in ice and water. So you just want to get the debris off. You very gently just lift it. You will be raking again if you have lawn. This time is just to do a cleanup. I can't stress that enough. The roots are tender. Garbage, we're going to get that gone. And that's where you come in with the debris. So I see some people get out at this time of year and they go nuts in their garden, and that's awesome to see. Every single leaf is gone. Every branch is gone. Everything. The garden is pristine, and believe me, it looks good. I love that. I love that aesthetic. I'm not going to lie. I absolutely adore it when the garden, when you're finished and you look and there's nothing to be seen and the soil is freshly tilled and the garbage is gone and the lawn has that first raking and you've lifted it because it's been lying flat and you're like, yeah. However, there are lots of beneficial bugs that live in those piles of debris, and you raking, you're going to wake them up. Now, a day like yesterday, wonderful. It's warm, they're ready to rock and roll. However, for the rest of this week, we're going to have days where our high is, sorry, I have to say it, -3. I'll see myself out. I'm just kidding. It's spring. It's going to happen. But those bugs, they're not ready for that. They don't have a winter coat they can put on. So you ripping apart their home and throwing it out, you're going to lose those beneficial bugs. They're either going to die or they're going to find somewhere else that they can shelter from the conditions. The problem is the problem bugs don't react like that. They're quite fine. So you are actually allowing the problem bugs to be good and you're hurting your beneficial bugs. So if you need to clean it out, you want to amend your flowers and there's leaves all at the back of the bed or around them or something like that, yeah, go ahead, get rid of some of them. Or the rest, push off to the side. Line the back of the fence with it. Put it behind the shed, the garage. Things are under the deck. Out of sight, out of mind, okay? It's where I used to clean my room. Colin, clean your room. Everything in the closet. Hey! If you never did that, kudos. You're a better child than I was. Okay, most people were a better child than I was. But you want it because I get it, okay? Full transparency, I'm arachnophobic. I adore spiders and what they do, and they're phenomenal. If one was on the counter, I would scream and run that way. They just do something to me, but they're phenomenal. They are phenomenal in the garden. Centipedes, ladybirds, they're living in these piles and they want to come out and they want to start scrunching on the bad bugs. And we may not like them, but they are our best friends. As gardeners, they are going to do a lot of work for you. So just be careful when you're cleaning out that debris. It feels good for us, but you're trashing a very, very good friend's home. So just be aware of when you do that. Absolutely move it. If you've got to get into your plants, don't get rid of all of it. It will cost you in the long run. It's like that whole thing where people are like, oh, that spider is more scared of you than you are of it. I don't think so. I don't believe spiders have the same depth of emotion that humans have. So I don't know that it can feel fear on the level I can. So anyway, that's our second seminar tomorrow on psychology of no, I'm kidding. We don't have a seminar tomorrow. We do have others coming up. We'll tell you about those, but not tomorrow. And certainly not on psycho. I am like the least equipped person.
What about science for the arachnophobes?
Yeah. I'll get back to gardening, will I?
Yes.
Watering. Okay, we got hoses. We got sprinklers. I think you all know this one.
Oh my God.
I was working on that one since last night. I was up till 2 in the morning, so I hope you all appreciate my joke. Hose heads, and I just grabbed I like blue, so I grabbed this one, my penguin t-shirt. But it doesn't matter. The thing I'm saying here with watering is you may need to do it. A lot of times at this time of year, people go, oh, well, as the snow melted, it put moisture in the ground. Yeah, it did, some, but a lot of times that snow on the top didn't melt through the snow beneath it, it evaporated, which is a good thing cyclically, but it's not so good for your garden. So you may not need to water, but you might need to. It's not like in the summer, no rain, 34 degrees, we know we have to water. It's not an option. Now it might be. So you've got to check. And again, different parts of your garden might have different things. You might have a part under trees or in the shade of your house. And the ground might still be frozen. Okay, great, no problem. But that bed that's southwest facing, full of your perennials, could be bone dry. And those perennials are trying to grow and there isn't a lick of moisture left for them. So you may have to look at that. And I see a lot of people in the morning, they'll go out and they'll test the soil. So they'll stick their finger in the soil and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's wet. It's cold. Okay, have you ever taken, you've done a load in the dryer and you take out a shirt and you're like, oh, it still feels damp. And it's not, it's just cold. Same principle. Cold soil isn't wet soil. They may feel the same. And even if it is a little damp because of a frost, so the frost has made it cold, the amount of moisture in that frost is not enough for the plants. As the day warms up, that's going to evaporate. It's not going to permeate. Okay, so your plants aren't going to get the benefit of that. So keep an eye out on what you're doing with the watering. It's very, very difficult to overwater a garden. Very easy to overwater pots, house plants, that kind of thing. But a garden bed, not a raised one, just a garden bed, flat on the ground, it's very, very hard to overwater that. It's honestly right now, the main thing I tell people is you just don't want to waste the utilities, right? Everybody's bills have gone up, so you just don't want to waste it. But it may need watering. And the ones you're really going to look for, anything that's actively growing, trees or shrubs that are in bud, they need water. There's a cycle happening right now and they need to take water. Now, massive, massive mature trees, their roots go deep enough, they're probably okay. But I'm talking about like your smaller apple trees, your raspberries, lilacs, things like that. It's not going to hurt if it seems dry to give them a shot of water. It's not going to do any damage. Your bulbs that are coming up, your perennials, your tulips or your daffodils might just be breaking through that crust and it might be very dry. Get some water. Remember, you planted them this far below ground. Your mature perennial, an echinacea that stands this tall, well, it's probably got a root system like this spreading all throughout. Get moisture down there. Get it going. You're out there anyway doing all this work, so you may as well do it. And another good thing that you can do at this time of year with watering is it's a great excuse to check that there's no leaks in your hose. It's a great way to check that your gun still works. Don't know about you guys, happened to me before. After the winter, I hang it up in the garage, but it wasn't fully drained. There's moisture in it, and the moisture, nope, that doesn't want to unscrew. I could make it, but I'm not going to. The moisture will get trapped in this seam up here. And what happens? Well, as it freezes, it expands and it cracks or it separates, and you go to turn it on and water is running down here or it's running down onto your hand, or the washer in here is dried out completely. your hose might have had a crack in it. So doing a little bit of watering lets you see like, oh, I need to replace that, or I need to repair that. I need to get some washers or a hose repair kit, or I need to pick up a new gun or a new sprinkler. So getting out and watering, not only is it going to be beneficial for your bulbs, your trees, your lawn, whatever is dry, whatever needs it, it's a good chance for you to test your tools. So next up, we're going to talk about fertilizing. To fertilize or not to fertilize. Fertilize is amazing. Really is. I put that after amendments because honestly, your amendments are the most important. Your fertilizer, though, is important. But you should only fertilize actively growing plants. Again, people jump the gun, they get excited, and they see a tiny little thing or a tiny bud, and they start fertilizing. Well, unless the plant is actively growing, really growing quick, there's activity, that fertilizer isn't doing anything, it's binding. It's much like me. If I spend a day where I do nothing but sit on the couch and eat an entire bag of Oreos to myself, yeah, it's not really going to be beneficial to me. But if I'm out and I'm hiking or gardening and I'm snacking on Oreos as I go, it gives me the energy to keep going. Same with the fertilizer. That fertilizer going down to the roots of an actively growing plant is going to help it with the energy and the nutrients it needs to be healthy and grow. If it's not actively growing, one, you're wasting money, and two, you can actually choke out the roots. The nutrients and the salts and whatnot that are in a fertilizer will stick to the root. Now the root can't get the water or the nutrients it needs, and it's caked in this sediment. So if you're going to fertilize, some great ones are granular, slow-release fertilizers. They break down based on moisture and heat. So on cooler days, they're not going to be sitting there. You sprinkle them on the surface and let them go. Great early season one to do, and less is more, okay? At this time of year, cut this in half and you're just giving the plants just a little taste. And please, 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 no matter what, follow the manufacturer's directions. They're all different. Read the back. More fertilizer does not equate to healthier fertilizer. Every year people come in with that problem and they go, oh, it said 10 mils per liter, so I did 20 mils per liter. If you're sick and you go to the doctor and he says, take 10 milligrams of penicillin a day, you don't go home and go, oh, well, if he said 10, 20 will make me better. You take the dosage. It's the same thing. Give the dosage it needs. These guys have spent millions, over the years, billions in research and development. They want you to be gardeners. They want you to be successful. And they have spent the money figuring out the best ratio. Adding too much is actually going to be massively detrimental. So just remember that when you fertilize. And right now, if you decide you're not going to fertilize, that's okay too. The amendments, the sunlight, and everything else should be more than enough. Trees and shrubs, good time to prune. Windstorms, snow, and ice buildup is going to cause broken branches. Get out and nip them off before it's full of leaves and you can't really see what you're doing. Don't over prune. I see that happen a lot this time of year. People will prune. It's going to encourage sucker growth. You might be taking off fully live limbs. Just take off always the 5 Ds. Okay? Dead, diseased, damaged, dangerous, and desirable. Sounds like all the adjectives you'd use for me.
There you go.
But be careful. And there's one I always want to bring up there. Dangerous. What dangerous means is a branch that might be hanging over a pathway, a branch that might be hanging over wires, a big branch that's broken and it's swinging. Be careful. If you need to call professional help, call professional help. If it is dangerous, because if a storm brings it down, try honestly to not do it yourself. We don't want anybody getting hurt. We don't want any structural damage. We don't want the tree getting hurt. But first and foremost, we don't want you getting hurt. Okay, everything else, we have insurance. If it's a city problem, everything else, we can get a new tree. Everything else can be dealt with. Do not risk hurting yourself. Always keep an eye out for that one. and get professional help if needed. Please, please, please. I see too many people standing on roofs, on a slope when it's still icy or wet, reaching over with a chainsaw because they think they can do it. And there's a friend on the ground with some rope. Yeah, you might get away with it, but if you don't, the damage it's not worth it. So just keep an eye out. Smaller branches that have broken or snapped or tips have come off, just take your pruners or your loppers if it's a bigger one, and just snip and clean up accordingly, looking for your 5 Ps. And then the other thing you can do, so we've done all of that. We've amended, we've cleaned up some debris, we've done a light raking, we've checked our watering, we've watered where needed.
Sorry, I just sorry, just a quick question about the 5 Ds. Sorry, what's desirable?
So desirable is if you have a branch and it's a very structural, solid branch, and you want to leave it, but it's coming up in the middle and it's splitting like that. Okay, well, when it splits like that, snow and ice and other debris can get in there. It can keep it wet, causing rot, and then it can start to split. So you want to keep that desirable branch, so you prune down below that and you keep that nice central stem. So desirable basically means pruning for shape or structure, building the tree around something. Great question.
Yeah.
Again, that's why I always encourage this. I've been doing this for years. Brandy's worked with me. She knows how my brain works. Poor Brandy. And I talk about things with customers, with staff, family, friends, you know, things I've learned and whatnot. And I can go over things really quick because it makes total sense in my head. So again, a comprehension question, jump right in. I have no problem clarifying. Great question. Thank you. And then next, planning and prep. So we look around our gardens, we've got it cleaned up, and we go, oh, what else can I do? It's too early to plant. Cleanup didn't take that long. What can I do? Start doing that. Check your tools. Get out there and take your tool down off the wall. Make sure it's clean. Make sure it's good to go. Sharpen your pruners if you're going to go out and do some pruning. Get all of your pots. Make sure they're all clean. Make sure they're not cracked. Check your fertilizers. You have a bag of fertilizer, you left it in your garage, maybe some moisture got in there, froze, and it's useless. So when you come to the garden center, you get more, as opposed to getting home, grabbing your fertilizer and being like, now I got to make a second trip on a busy day where you want to be gardening. So doing all of this at this time of year, wow, listen to the guys singing. They're louder than me. I love it. Love it. Happy springtime, Birdles. And I didn't want to say failures, so I did something that might not be the best English I've ever used. So remember your successes and your not so successes from last year. If something worked and the plants did amazing, do it again. If it didn't work, your peppers didn't get warm enough, or your tomatoes were in too much shade, move them around. Remember that and go, oh, that didn't work. And you start planning. Don't get out there and be like, oh, where does everything go? Take this time, sketch it out, draw it out, have fun with it. Tools, really easy. Lift them down, give them a quick look. Any old soil or old rust, buff it out. You can always coat them with oil, not engine oil. When I say that, vegetable oil or horticultural oil. And I'm always going to say that because I've said it before and somebody literally was like, motor oil? And I was like, no, thank you for saying that. So now I make a point of saying that. Old school, that's how they used to do it. We know a little better now.
Actually?
Yeah.
Wow.
I knew a gardener back in the day in England, must have been early 80s. I just aged myself horribly. Early 80s, I was one. No. And it was a friend of my dad's who was a gardener. Yeah, he used to use his old motor oil, no less.
Wow.
Yeah, from his oil change, and he would coat his tools with that, and then he'd go work.
Interesting.
Yeah, to each their own. Vegetable oil, horticultural oil, work great. You want to be all fancy, you can use olive oil.
Ooh.
Maybe a little bit of balsamic.
Salt bay, that.
Tool bay. And check the working conditions. Make sure there's no cracks. Make sure there's nothing in the handle. If it's a wood handle and you got some splinters, a bit of sandpaper can help clean that up. Hockey tape, electrical tape. You don't want to get out there, start using it and have it break in your hand. You don't want it being clumps of old soil that might have, powdery mildew spores or something on it, and you start spreading that through. So a little bit of cleanliness, a little bit of work on the tools goes a long way. Same with your pots. Make sure your pots are clean. I upcycle all my pots. I talk about it all the time. If I have an infestation of powdery mildew or something like that, I will either get rid of the pot or I will sterilize it. Make sure your drain holes are unclogged. A lot of times, even if we keep our soil because we're going to amend it, nothing wrong with upcycling, dump it out. Don't fix it in the pot because you may have got a plug in your drain hole. Maybe it's roots. Maybe it's just a big plug of soil. Now it's not going to drain properly. So dump the soil out, amend it, put it back in. Perfect. No problem with that. But it's better for your pot. And if you are going to sterilize, on that slide, I was too lazy and didn't have enough room to write hydrogen peroxide. So I said H2O2. H2O2 is hydrogen peroxide. So if you didn't know that, you also learned something else today. Teaching science. I could be a science teacher too. Yeah. That's literally all I know. Hydrogen peroxide works great, sterilizes, but it also evaporates really quick. So there's nothing lasting that's going to damage the roots. Some people use bleach and rinse. I'm never going to tell people what you can't do. At the end of the day, it's your garden. I highly recommend hydrogen peroxide. I'm going to say that. And check that the pots are undamaged. Sometimes we'll have a crack running down the pot. We don't notice, and this has happened to me. I go to plant, I firm the soil down, and the side blows out my pot. Now I'm a pot down, I have a huge mess, and I got to scramble to think of what I'm doing. If on a cooler, rainier day when I didn't want to be in the garden, I'd spend an hour going through and looking at my pots, I would have mitigated that problem. Ensure they haven't buckled, especially true of window boxes, where you put them down and they're rocking like that. And the reason for that is when you water and it tips, water is going to run away from one end. So one end's always going to be drier. Or if you have a round pot that's sitting there, if the bottom is warped or buckled, you water it, it gets heavy, the whole thing can go over. I've seen that happen. Again, you put it on a flat surface, garage floor, give it a wiggle, it feels sturdy, it's good to go. And check the base. Again, this is why we dump the soil out. If you've left soil and there's been moisture, that moisture might have cracked as the ice expanded and it might have forced the bottom. You put soil in, you firm it down, you plant it, it looks amazing. You lift it and the bottom falls out. So a few minutes to check your pots, give them a little tap, look for cracks, goes a very long way when we get to planting day. So you always want to check for that. And planning and layout. Have fun with it. Sketch it on a piece of paper. Use Word document and emojis. Use Excel and use the little squares. Each square represents an inch or a foot or whatever. Have fun. Bring the kids in. You don't have to write everything out. You can do a fun layout and print it. Make it colorful, and then you know where everything is. We don't have to write everything out. Slap a big tomato emoji and write San Marzano below it. Beefsteak, cherry. There you go. You've got your layout. You can do it a lot quicker. You can have fun, and you can bring the kids in. Kids love, maybe they're not a big fan of gardening. Maybe they don't know how to garden yet, but maybe they love doing designs. Maybe they've got like an artistic streak. Get them to help you. Get them to draw the garden and draw things in together. It can be a lot of fun. Then when you're outside on gardening day, you're not going, do I put my tomatoes there? You can think about it. You look at the seed pack and go, oh, this tomato is going to get bigger than this pepper. So I have to make sure it's further back so I'm not shading my pepper because you want the sun. So that little bit of planning can go a very long way for an overall successful garden. And move stuff around. You do not have to do what you did last year. If it was successful, you want to do it, go for it. But if you're like, no, I'm going to move the peas over there, I'm going to move the tomatoes to there, and I'm going to do have fun with it. Move it around, give them what they need. We've got amendments, we've got fertilizers, we've got it all. We can help you be successful. So that wraps us up. A little bit over time, but this is a very, 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 I could have gone for a lot longer on every one of those things. Could have been a seminar in and of itself. These are the broad strokes. We know people want to get outside. Last thing I want to see people doing is going outside, enthusiastic, happy to be gardening, ready to rock in this amazing environment, and doing more harm than good. I want people to go out there when they're done to be like, oh yeah, this was successful. The garden is clean, but I left my home for the bugs. You know, that area is still frozen, but I made sure that area was watered. I got in my shopping notes, I need to buy a new sprinkler because my sprinkler is leaked. All those little things, and it makes us be more successful as the season goes on. Huge thank you attending our first webinar. Always exciting. Full steam ahead. We have more webinars coming up. We have one coming up on cannabis growing during Earth Week. We have one coming up on annuals. We've got birding, we've got trees. Everything's on our homepage. If you go to the homepage of our website, click on the link, bam, every webinar. They're always free. They're always going to be Saturday at 10 o'clock. It's always going to be Brandy and I. We can't wait to see you guys. So with that being said, Q&A.
Yeah, and one of those